conversion testing and analysis. Now, here's the doozy we've mentioned repeatedly throughout your training. It comes down to the fact that profitable marketing requires systematic testing and analysis of data, followed by optimization of each marketing strategy based on that data. In a recent informal survey of successful business owners who were attending a special $1 million business seminar by renowned business and wealth expert Eben Pagan, attendees were shocked when they found out how vital conversion testing and analysis is to a company's revenues and profits. Eben asked all attendees if they had ever tested any element of their marketing. Roughly half the room raised their hands. Then he asked how many people tested every month. Most of the hands went down. Weekly? Now only a few hands remained up. Daily, only 2 gentlemen continued to keep their hands raised. Eben asked each of them what their monthly revenue was. It was in the tens of millions. Monthly. These 2 gentlemen had the highest grossing companies in the room. That is a snapshot of the absolute exponential power of tracking your marketing efforts, collecting and analyzing the data, and lastly, taking action based on that data. There are 2 types of conversion testing, A-B split testing and multivariate testing, also known as Taguchi testing. We'll start with A-B split testing. This is the traditional form of testing we've already talked about. Google allows you to split test various ads, and we discussed split testing variations of your landing pages and their individual elements. A-B split testing means you're testing variation A against variation B. But the challenge is that you can only test one element at a time. If you test more than one, you won't be able to tell which element contributed to the changes in results. For example, one might typically test 2 different headlines on a landing page. One would outperform the other, and you'll know which one is the top performing headline. But if you had 2 different headlines and 2 different prices, you wouldn't be able to determine which element or combination or variations of those elements made the actual difference. However, there is a lot that you can do with A-B split testing, and split testing is often easier and cheaper than multivariate testing. First, you can use A-B split testing to better understand visitors' behaviors and priorities when visiting your site. You can also use A-B split testing to solve specific problems with your site pages. In other words, use it as a diagnostic tool to find out what's wrong and then fix it. Or you can use A-B split testing to dramatically challenge assumptions you may have about the best way to design or write a page or a marketing element. Test not only the changes in minor elements. Also, first test 2 completely and dramatic redesigns of an entire page. Then drill down to test variations of each element of the winning page. Now, this brings up another important point. Testing yields the most valuable results only when you test repeatedly. Remember how Eben Pagan's wealthiest attendee tested daily? That translated into tens of millions of dollars in revenue every month. That's because a one-shot test will tell you very little. But when you make a consistent habit of testing, cumulative tests over time can have a dramatic impact on the success of your site and your marketing messages. Here's an interesting case study conducted by a company called MarketingExperiments.com that regularly conducts and reports on marketing experiments. In this experiment, they tested 2 versions of an email written to convert leads into sales for a particular offering. Version A couched the sales text into the context of an emotionally charged story that was making recent headlines. Version B, otherwise identical, didn't specifically describe the story, but instead alluded to recent events in the news. The essential difference between the 2 emails was that one mentioned the event by name and the other didn't. Now, as you can see here, version A dramatically outperformed version B. Click-through ratio increased by 16.5%, and overall conversion to sales increased a whopping 43.4%. This dramatic increase in sales required nothing other than a slightly altered secondary version to test and basic tracking software. The experimenters simply sent version A to half the list, as you can see, and version B to the other half. If you conducted this simple test, imagine what your company could do with 43.4% additional sales. Not to mention that you can test further elements to increase conversions even more and scale or duplicate your results further to produce additional profits. Now, this second case study, believe it or not, is even more impressive. With the last example, we can easily say that common sense assumes that a sales offer contextualized into an emotional story would pull better than one that wasn't. Any copywriting professional would say that's marketing 101. But we have to be careful here with assumptions. Sure, sometimes they're right, but that doesn't mean we're right to make those assumptions, unless we test them for validity. Because, as we see with this second example, when we test other tenets of Marketing 101, we see that recommended strategies for improving conversions don't always work. It might be your audience, the relationship you've had with them before this particular marketing message, or a variety of other factors. But if what works for others doesn't work as effectively for you, you need to know about it and find out what combination of elements will help you outperform the results of others. In this particular case, the assumption was that a sales letter including personalized copy and a picture of the author would increase conversions compared to a version of the sales letter omitting these elements. In this particular case, the assumption was that a sales letter including personalized copy and a picture of the author would increase conversions compared to a version of the sales letter omitting these elements. The data proved differently. Conventional wisdom assumed version A would win, but version B did. Now, this means that had these experimenters simply gone with largely accepted wisdom and hadn't tested it to determine what the market would actually respond to, they would have been leaving money on the table. Now, we've just finished explaining that you can only test one element at a time, and unless you have a large sample size, only two variations of an element at a time. This is true with split testing. However, with the recent advent of a new testing methodology called multivariate testing, you can accurately test multiple variations simultaneously. You can also test multiple elements simultaneously. But the real power of multivariate testing is that you can accurately test multiple variations of multiple elements all at once to determine the best performing combination without an exceedingly large sample size and in a relatively short amount of time. Now, beyond the immediate improvements in page performance, multivariable testing offers two other important benefits. First, an accelerated learning curve. A single A/B split test can teach you something important about a key page or element. Now, imagine the exponential benefit to your bottom line when you can collect and analyze data regarding 20, 500, or 1,000,000 combination configurations in that same amount of time. And second, innovative thinking. When you can test only one change at a time, you're under pressure to think of a good change, something with a high likelihood of improving results. Now, this can lead to cautious thinking. However, with multivariable testing, you can test as many changes as you like. No pressure, and you're free to innovate with no fear of wasting your time or effort. In this case, a loans company wanted to test several variables of 7 different elements identified as success factors that could dramatically affect their response rates. Were this company to choose A/B split testing, it would be impossible to create any meaningful test that could quickly and accurately identify which combination of factor options would pull the best results. We can easily see this when we realize that we have to test 4,374 ads to test all possible combinations. This is why multivariate testing can dramatically and relatively quickly increase a company's conversion rates by 100 or even 300%. The results speak for themselves. In as little as 3 weeks, this loan company multiplied their response rate by 344%, from a disappointing 0.9% to an above-average conversion of 3.1%. Now, luckily for us, the most vital aspect of your marketing, tracking and analyzing data and conversions, is not a science you have to learn on your own. You can easily use tools to do all the heavy lifting for you, guiding you by the hand to make sense of the results and take effective action to optimize your marketing efforts accordingly. For split testing software, the best tools we've found are Google Website Optimizer, which is free, and Split Test Accelerator, which must be purchased. There are several multivariate testing tools and services now emerging, and we strongly recommend you look into them once you ramp up your marketing. A good rule of thumb is to get your marketing implemented on a basic level, such as how we're training you to do today. Then, once you start getting enough traffic and visibility that you can successfully test, work with a conversion analysis tool or service. You want to do this before you spend your entire budget on a large-scale promotion. Test to find out what works. Get the best response rates. Then, scale your budget and your marketing efforts accordingly. David Bullock is the leading expert in multivariate testing and recommends several tools he has personally used or helped develop. At the page linked here, you'll find links to several multivariate testing tools and David's personal review and recommendation of each one, based on his experience and quantifiable results. Now, to recap, conversion analysis is easy to implement and vital to your marketing success and increased profits. You'll receive with your materials a list of conversion analysis resources in case you want to learn more, and we'll also include this link to David's recommended tools.